Good morning. Thank you for being here. We will start this brand new module. This is not something that I have taught before. I've taught in this course for 6 years now, and Professor Eager has been a very good source of inspiration to always bring new topics into the class. And when I mentioned this idea to talk about technology innovation, he got fairly excited, so I decided to go ahead and do it. It's going to be a combination of what I've been taught by mostly mentors, also the National Science Foundation, and my personal experience in talking to a lot of other startup entrepreneurs. Before we really get into the meat of it, first of all, there's nothing in technology innovation that is guaranteed. It is high risk, and there's no perfect recipe. I can speak with experience. I have children. I have twins, 2.5 years old. And it's very similar. You decide to start, you have a plan, and you have to keep changing it, okay? There's nothing here that is static. So everything I describe is mostly to generate ideas, and you'll see the way that I've organized the class, and I'll show it here on the screen. There's the description on the syllabus. We're going to go over the steps that are known to be important and that can be easily overlooked. Everybody will always think, oh, I got this great idea, it's got to be worth a lot, just the idea. And my experience, and if you see here, as a first bullet, is from idea to executing plans successfully. It is really where most of, especially technology innovation, a struggle, where you have a great idea, but to take it from the idea to the finish line, if you don't have the right strategy and plan and team, it's just going to take too long. And therefore, nobody, including the government, is going to sponsor it. So that really is one of the highlights, that time is against you. I mean, we are in an economy where things move really fast, and the advantage of a small organization is be able to adapt more quickly. But it doesn't mean that you don't need to be very rigorous about what you're doing. So more or less, we're going to do the 6 lectures on those topics, where today I'll really talk about some of the very key aspects. We're going to dive right to the core of what needs to happen. And then the next lecture, next week on Monday, I'll talk more about how ideas, according to me and a lot of others, I've read 2 books on this, originate, and how you can funnel them a little bit and evaluate them, essentially. So that's going to be our second step. Then really the process of deciding, it's a go, no go at some point. So you have an idea, you can file a patent, and then you talk about it, you evaluate it, and are you going to go for it, or just realize that this is going to be too much for you, for the friends or colleagues that are involved with you evaluating the opportunity. I mean, we have opportunities as professionals that come almost every day. You get to a project, somebody's suggesting to try something new, and the question is, are we spending time on this? Is it a priority for us? And a lot of that does become a personal decision. One thing that I will emphasize, and again provide what I've been provided with, is how to build quickly by working on the technology and working on the customers at the very same time. It's incredible the value and the feedback that you get by being blunt enough to show something that's not finished. To express your ideas and see the reaction. There'll be people that will tell you, well, I'm only interested if it's free. That's not helpful. Or for a certain amount of money that you know it's going to take you 10 years before your technology, your process, your equipment, your service, whatever it is that you're inventing, is going to be available at that price. So you're wasting your time. That's really where we're going to be talking there. Then the fifth topic about making sales. This is something that was described to me at a resonating time when it was becoming the important part of my company, where if you don't make sales, you failed. Everything else doesn't matter at that point. You know, everything else that you worked on, protecting your ideas, building a team, building a technology or a service, if you're not able to sell it, that's it. And there will be entrepreneurs that will postpone a little bit this effort of, you know, would you buy this? For how much and when? but you have to be blunt. You need to be able to ask those questions so you can reorient your effort to the right people that will be ready, will be willing, will have the need, the budget, and also be willing to make the commitment to move forward. So it's a very, very important step. And then the last lecture, first of all, be more welcoming, more and more questions for things that may have been a little bit, you know, cut square, because this is a lot. This is, just I think I mentioned, anybody that's going to try to do this is going to need a lot of help. And I'm not here to give you, you know, the entire highlight of, you know, a prescription list. It's really more of an overview. And just like we discussed on Tuesday in the introduction lecture, the idea here is, even if you're not doing it, you'll see people that do it. And please help them. Because it really isn't easy. And it is for the greater good. When you are able to create value, and that really is a key topic here that I want to highlight. So I'm going to put it on the board. The technology innovation, in a very simple way, is you create something that is valuable. That is, unfortunately, not just what you're building, but also what people are going to do with it. So I'm going to start here. So what my startup is a testing instrument, a non-destructive testing instrument. The value is not in the instrument, is in the people knowing what they're going to be able to do with the data coming out of the machine. So we have the technology here, and then we have the customer, because at the end of the day, they'll get a report, and they need to be able to say, okay, this is what I'm going to be able to do with this report. It's going to help me for this and this and this and that. Now, the next part is to capture and accept. Maybe if you are in a university setting, and maybe even then, you won't be able to do this if you're not able to demonstrate that you're also going to be able to do this. So they really come together, and it's a very, very serious process. When I started 3 years ago, I would tell potential investors, well, I'm working on this, and then we'll do our best to make the other one happen. We'll just work hard and make it happen. And it just didn't work. And I'll tell you today, one reason why I do agree that it shouldn't work. If you can't articulate how you're going to do something, then it just won't happen. Because the reality is, it's been 3 years. I do go back to things that I've written up, you know, the past 6 months. Generally not before that, because things change so much. But if I am with a customer, with my team, with potential investors, with collaborators, I don't have the time to go back and do this analysis. I need to have all of this essentially figured out, and it has to be pretty much in my head, so I can make decisions quickly. Yes?
Do you find yourself, especially in your startup world, where you're small and agile, at least presumably, do you find yourself having to adapt your business plan from what you originally intended in order to meet a customer need or a market that you identify?
Yes, so the question is, do you have to adapt your plan a lot? And the answer is absolutely. A plan typically on the detail may be good for a month or two. And that changes. If I think about, let's say the first year, there really wasn't much of a plan. You know, other than this vision and this general idea of we're going to go for this market and we have to connect with those people. When are we going to be able to do it? A lot of time it's not your call. It's very, very hard to get through these steps at the speed that you decide. Yes?
First question that comes up is like, what's the time frame?
Okay.
Nobody usually say, how
Okay.
long is it going to take for that?
All right. There's a question about the timing for here to here, which is a very good question. So, for me at this point, we are exactly here. We really are. We've been demonstrated. The customers, our biggest customers. We had a meeting yesterday, and it was very to the narrow point. This is ultimately what I want to do with your data. This is why I'm going for it. And I want you to do all this work this year so we get to that point. So now we're going to be working for them, really. And we're going to be making sure that we get that reputation, and then everything takes off from there. So it's proven to the point where it's clear that there is something to do with the tool and with the data. And then the question is, now let's go ahead and do it. It's a big, big change. And we'll go through that in a lot more details later. Yes.
I'm sorry to be so persistent, but could you please give an example of how, for instance, using your non-destructive investigative technology, how you had to adapt to meet a customer need, how you had to deviate from the plan that you had in order to capture a market or a customer?
Yes. Okay, the question is how you have to adapt your original plan for the customer. First of all, so just to be clear, when you start, you don't know for sure exactly who you're going to be providing your technology to. You don't. Yeah, and you shouldn't. You want to be proactive. You want to look at different kinds of customers and sort of evaluate them. So they call it market segments, and we'll go through that. Now comes the point where you say, this is the general market segment that I'm going to target for a reason X, Y, and Z, and it's a big process to be able to do that. When you reach that point to say, I'm going to go for this segment here, you hope that you don't have to go back to that decision. In our case, we didn't. If you do, then it's years extra, essentially, to have to recenter your focus on customer. Now, with respect to the details of exactly how you're going to be helpful to them, it's a very gradual process of determining. And in our case, for breakthrough technology, because this is really what I want to talk about, something that is completely different, not a betterment of something that already exists. Because if it's a betterment, that's something that already exists, there's already a lot of knowledge from that existing large competitor of what the customer expectation is. If it's something new, first of all, when you meet with your potential customer, don't believe everything they say, because they don't know either. And they'll have a meeting with you, they'll say something, oh yeah, I'm very interested, and I'd love to try this. And then 2 years later, it's absolutely ready, but no, now it's serious. Now that there is money on the line, and they're not gonna go get the budget. So it's part of the reality where you only have so much real knowledge. Until they've written a check, you have to adjust your plan. When they write a check, now you really write the plan of how you're gonna deliver, but then you really are in this mode here. So I hope that, thank you for all the questions, because that hopefully clarifies where we are. We're talking about disruptive innovation, something that is different, and it takes a special effort to make it true. On the question of timing, just so I expand here, if you look, because that may be a good way, so one of the great sponsor of innovation in this country is the National Science Foundation. They have the largest SBIR budget. So I'm going to write it here, and they do look for great ideas. So NSF SBIR, it's a 15-page proposal, and they open for solicitation twice a year. And it could be on just about anything. So that's the beauty of that program.
What's SBIR?
Small Business Innovative Research, and that is common to a lot of government agencies. It's a program that was launched more than 15, 20 years ago, where each important the U.S. department has a percent of their overall budget that has to be spent on small business innovative research. So for a department like the Department of Transportation, they have a certain budget. Department of Defense has a budget, and then the NSF has a budget. The NSF program is very competitive. So when you put out your idea with the 15-page and all the documentation, you worked on this for 2 months, you have maybe a 12% chance of making it, that depending on which program you apply for. And then the funding goes for 6 months, and you have 6 months to demonstrate to the government that you should be getting what they call a phase 2, which is a 2-year program. So as a generality, that 3-year of being out of the R&D mode with the technology is a little bit the expectation of those programs. So they'll give you a 6 months. There's a 6-month wait period where you hope that you can generate more customer interaction with what you've been able to do with your phase 1 funding. And then they give you a 2-year contract to do more R&D to get it close to the finish line. If you look at this and you say it's going to take me 5 years before I can move from creating value to capturing value, well, you may have to evaluate your plan. You may not have the right, or you're going to need to partner to be able to speed that up. 5 years is just a very, very long time to be creating something without capturing anything out of it, most cases. There will be exceptions. Department of Defense needs to have a very long-term vision. So if they're looking for a special new kind of submarine, for example, they may invest in you knowing that at the end of 2 years, you're still going to be there, and then they'll sponsor another one, and then eventually, when you add them all up, you may be able to make something, okay? But in general, especially with the National Science Foundation, if when you add it all up, you say this is going to take me 5 years, it's going to be very hard. Very good question. Any more questions? Okay. So I want to put us into a little situation here. That concerns you. You have all sorts of ideas, right? Sometimes you don't want to tell anybody because you have no idea if it's a good idea. But let's say that you got to a point where you really think maybe they found something useful. and either you know or you're talking to people and say, oh, you know what am I going to do? Because they say they would use this, this would be really, really useful for building new aircraft, anything, a new communication system, anything that you say, oh my gosh, if my idea could be used for this, it'd be great. At that point, all you need is time. And you need to work hard. But I highly recommend that you don't quit your job. or that you don't go off after school thinking this is the only thing you're going to be doing. You have to do a homework here. And it's a very, very serious homework, and that's what we're going to talk about for the next 20 minutes. The homework is, how can I build a start? And here really, it's pretty much the only set of slides that I'm really going to tap on the National Science Foundation, because I really want you to walk out of here with the same impression I had 2 years ago, say, oh boy, this is real. If I don't do this, I'm probably wasting a lot of time, energy, and money. And that is business model. That's the answer. And there's plenty of books on it. This one, Business Model Generation. I read the first half and then realized, oh, I should do these things. Because first of all, there's nothing about perfection here. It's about having the right idea at the right time. So instead of saying, this is definitely something I need to spend time on, it's a one-page sheet. It's not big. That you start filling in and asking people questions to have an idea of what it is. And what you'll find is you have to go to the customers. You have to. Unless you really are going to be the only buyer, which is the case of what we discussed, Kelly. If you have your system, you don't need to ask other people, you're just going to build it. That's great. So the one exception here is if you're the customer, don't worry, you'll pay yourself for what you want, that's fine. But if this is something about others buying what you are innovating on, you need to ask them. You can't just assume. And it's extremely, extremely easy to make guesses. And you'll have to live with them, but you have to at least acknowledge that you don't really know. So the first time you'll fill it in, this sheet, they're going to be just your thoughts, or your hope, or your guesses. It varies over time. And one thing they suggested, I wasn't the best at this because I was really mostly working it in my head, and mostly really, really talking to the customer. My customer discovery was really, really difficult because I was dealing with the oil and gas companies. It's huge operations. It's very important to our economy. But they have other things to do than talk to these smart people that have ideas. And they get bombarded with people that have ideas all the time. So they are expert at not engaging more than what they need to. And you'll find the same if you go to potential sponsors with Department of Defense. They'll get proposal with an idea day in, day out, and it's very, very hard for them to kind of screen to this and say, well, I should literally do that half-hour call with this one person, So if you're going to be doing customer discovery, you have to find your customer. And in my case, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, I've had a few people coming to me and say, can you introduce me to this? And the first question is, okay, so what do you have for them? If you can't articulate something to capture their attention in a few sentences in an email, good luck to you, So my best advice here as far as starting to fill this in, talking to the customer, you have to have enough friends and connections and faculty and all these people around here, mentors and all of that, to get you to the point where you're able to capture some attention on the customer. And some of it is educating yourself. You know, there is the web that has a lot of information about what people do. So when you are managed to have even a 5-minute conversation, you want to be as prepared as possible. If it's really, and it all depends on the level that you had to work to get that 5 minutes. Yes?
To protect yourself is the patent. I mean, at this point, you already have a patent, and you've protected yourself, so you're not sharing technology that people could steal.
Okay, the question is about the patent. I want to divert just a 20 minutes, and we'll talk about it. But, yeah, I have some very specific personal view and experience with it. So right now, all we're trying to do with the tools we have is rule in or rule out our hypothesis. Are we really making the right focus here? Is this really something we build? I'll take an example right here, okay? So I had assumed our instruments was going to be used to test big fusion wells. So I needed the tool to be small to be able to go into the little corners where the wells are. We spent 3 months working out the concept to put in the patent. We built a prototype. There was this little small thing. But guess what? Our customers today, 3 years later, it's big pipes. We don't need that little thing. And therefore, we spent a lot of time thinking, trying things out, doing the modeling, working out a bunch of concepts that may be useful later, but was not what we should have done. And that really is where there's, between the idea and refining it to a point where you say, okay, now I'm filing this patent application, which is not just a one-time stop. And Steve Lyon is going to talk about this. It's a process. It's you know, when the first time you file something as a provisional application, it's just the beginning. That costs almost nothing, but then later on, don't worry, you'll spend money. There's no doubt about that. For good reasons. It's very valuable. But you have to get to your customer some way, and we will talk about that, how you can do that. So how you work this. This is, I want you to remember this image. You engage with your customers. You have to do it. It's scary. It's like dating, okay? You're at a bar and you say, oh, you know, let's see the personality here, and you know, I like that, whatever. They may just tell you, I don't care, okay? This is not important to me. You have to ask. You have to find a way to ask the questions. So here's what the NSF told us to do back when, 2 years ago. 8 weeks of work. That's a plan. Find 30 interviews, 30 people that will tell you, I like it, I don't like it, for this and this reason. You have to be, because you'll be faced with this if you go in this route, or you'll see people and you want to tell them. Let's say you get a call from somebody that has an idea. Don't get them excited. Don't tell them that it's a great idea if you're not going to buy it. Okay, it doesn't help them, because it is what they're looking for at first. You know, some form of reinsurance that they may have a great idea, and just telling them, yes, it sounds interesting, you know, I want to learn more. They all of a sudden, you know, get more excited. You don't want to discourage them, but the idea is to really take that time to evaluate, okay, ask questions. So what exactly would that thing do that you have? So you can start thinking, would that really be useful to me in ways that I'm not doing today? I mean, that's the question. It's not like, yeah, let's go, that's a great idea. You know, it's, what am I going to do with it? So you don't want to be guessing. You don't want to be like, oh, I've just got these people interested, they want to learn more. Okay. I agree. Being able to have a follow-up from an initial conversation is awesome, because it means now you'll get to do the questioning. And the questioning is why you question is because you are a fool. You can't fool yourself, but you are the easiest person to fool. Because it's your idea, you like it, you talk to a few people that want to be supportive, they like it, but then exactly how is that going to turn into a real innovation? I mean, that's the difference between an invention and innovation. Yes?
I'm sorry to be
It's perfect.
thick. I'm sorry to be obviously thick, but interviews with whom? With potential customers or with innovators like yourself who are involved in the industry? Interviews with whom?
Yeah, so the interviews are with the customer.
So all oil and gas people, you visit oil and gas people.
Okay, so the question was, exactly how do you interview? You interview people that are in the specific industry segment that you're targeting. And it does not have to be the end customer. It could be somebody that's already providing services to them, somebody that's providing consulting services to that industry. It could be somebody that worked in that industry before. You have all sorts of options there to build up your knowledge, your credibility, and your ability to engage at a higher level of conversation.
You want to pick their brain so that you can learn how best to engage your down-the-line customer.
Yes, so it's a good comment. Essentially, what you want to do with these 30 interviews is, because that's what the 30 interviews is, you want to work your way up to resolve, you transform your guesses into real data for your business model. And if you just wait in there and try to get to the CEO of a big automotive company, you are wasting your time, right? So are you going to be able to talk to somebody at a lower level in an automotive company? Probably if you're able to tell them what it is that you have and things like that. So it really depends. If, let's say that you have an idea that you want to protect, you may want to go to somebody that you're introduced to that is a consultant in that industry, and therefore is never going to be directly engaged with your idea. And if you trust them because of how it's been introduced, you may be able to get an NDA with them and be able to tell them a little bit more. So they'll tell you, oh, well, I think you should talk to this person, and you don't have to tell them this, but you may be able to tell them that, and figure it out if this is something they'll be interested for next year, and things like that. But it's a very gradual process. You may be lucky. Your idea really does apply to everybody. You just go around the class here and you just ask people, would you like a backpack that's $150 if it does this and this and that? Maybe it doesn't take you 8 weeks. But the idea with the 8 weeks is to gradually work your way towards resolving the questions that you should have regarding your business model.
On that,
Yes.
on that table that you've got, early on, it might be hard to distinguish key partners and customers, I thought.
Yes, so it's a very good question. So that table is the business canvas. And the question was, how do you figure out where to put people? Let's say you meet with someone that's, an automotive company. Is he going to be considered? Well, that's an easy one. He should be the advisor, right? Unless you think that. So what it is let's say you come up with an idea, right? A new concept for a trunk of a car. Okay, something that for whatever reason you can benefit from this. Whether it's the material that's just absolutely awesome, the process, or whether the mechanical concept itself allows you to get patent protection on it. So you may think of your customer as the buyer of the car. You know, it's not impossible to think of it this way. You may still think that it's the automotive company that's going to really be making the decision. You're right, you don't know. Maybe you really want to sell it to the design firm that provides, you know, a very firm design to the automotive company. I think that the most important part here, and we'll talk about the customer, we have a whole hour for that. It's the value proposition. What exactly are you going to be providing people? Where's the pain that you're going to be fulfilling here? Because if there's no pain, well, good luck, okay? And therefore, there are a bunch of boxes. You may not know exactly where to put everybody, but the place where it's the hardest is to be very, very clear about what exactly is it, the value that you provide, especially for technology. Because again, is it really going to be cost reduction? Is it going to be a competitive advantage with the other vendor, or is it going to be something like better safety or things like that? You know, a better reputation. I mean, you have to work your way into this. And and you may end up with a different value proposition for the different people that you're talking to. You know, the design firm that could use your idea to sell their design to an automaker. You know, they want to show that they've worked on this and they have something that the other guys have, and they may be able to charge a premium. You'll have to figure it out. Whether they're going to be wanting to use you as leverage for their business is probably a good starting hypothesis there. And that's really is a big topic here. So you can all make plans. For 3 years now, I've been making plans. The general plan has been to have the tool ready in about 3 years. And so on that worked out, was the vision. But exactly how to get to there has just changed all the time. And exactly which customer and for what need has also changed quite a bit. And the value of talking to them all the time is to be able to adjust. So you get punched each time. No, I don't want this for this reason, okay? And the reality is, in my case, I probably talked at this point, I have 500 people, something like that, for that one market segment that I'm working on. Everybody knows me, people that I don't know, and it's a good thing. That's what I've been told. But it's been probably the most useful thing I've done, you know, building that network and really, really always making just a little incremental advancement. You can't expect that you're going to have a meeting that's going to answer all your questions. So you start with what you have, and to the extent that you can, guys, if you're going to do this or help somebody do this, establish right at first what you already know. So the person you're talking to don't tell you things you already know. So it's a very, very basic starting point. You show them where you're at, and then they'll tell you one thing here and there, and then you make your way up from there. So this is very important for today. The majority of startups, they fail, okay? They really do. They go to zero. With or without intellectual property, believe on the campus here with our ecosystem, with all the resources that you can tap into, you can highly increase your likelihood of success. But this is something I've done a year and a half ago. I printed this and put it on the wall because these are statistics. That the first reason why a startup is not going to work is you're building something that nobody is really going to pay for. That is the top reason. So you started, you invested money, maybe you even got a grant to advance your idea, but at the end of the day, people don't want it. Hiring poorly. Well, it's very difficult. It's a very difficult task to have a startup company, and you need change all the time. So you have to think when you partnering with people, when you're hiring new people, you have to think of, you know, what's the benefit for them and what's the need for the company. It's not just pulling out people that you like. It's pulling out people that really are going to fulfill a very specific critical need in the company. And communicate that very clearly, that there's a hole here. We know we have a hole, and that's what we need, okay? We don't need somebody very smart and hardworking, but that's gonna work on things outside of the hole. This is where we need. And it's a very important step to figure out exactly what is the most critical thing for this next year, and how we're going to best fulfill that need in terms of personnel, partner, collaborators, you know. Lack of focus comes as third. On that, I've been lucky. Focus is one of my strengths, if you know the strength finder things. If I start on something, I'll narrow it down and I'll stay, you know, on track to keep learning. But it's so easy. One of my mentors 6 months ago said, because I was talking about starting now the customer discovery for other markets, and he said very clearly, he said, this is the problem of being smart, because you look around and say maybe the grass is greener there, because those customers you had an earlier stage, and they'll just say, oh yes, we have this big problem, come and help us. What you have to remember is before you're actually able to help them, you'll have to create the value. If you haven't spent that time yet, you're behind. Your only real option is to continue on the track you're on. That's your only, because you already are years out. And you were right. Okay, so stay focused. You know, it's extremely easy. I see it. I'm part of all these mailing lists of people, and you know, they start thinking, oh, we need an HR department, we need this, we need this, we need this, and you know, optimizing this, and how do you deal with this problem? Hey, have you really focused which one is your customer and when are you going to get a check for them? I'd love to see more conversation. I'd love to see more conversation between entrepreneurs about that than about little things that, yes, you need, but they don't make the end difference. The focus there is so important. If I had worried about whether we were going to use this vendor or this vendor for payroll, I would have wasted very precious time making these 500 relationships that I have with people that I can call on, and they call on me to move things forward. So I cannot emphasize it, how important it is. And look, we've already covered 2/3 here. Fail to execute sales and marketing. So to some extent here on the fourth reason, that's so a big pie of the chart here, it's kind of saying, we're ready to go, move from here to here. And we'll talk about that in sales. If a customer says yes, sheesh, it's not party, you know, you gotta move on. You gotta say, okay, great, let's see how we're gonna make this work for you. Okay, it's not like, oh, you'll sign right here, so I can celebrate. It's just, it's the beginning of this new big bubble there. That's what it is in that case. So. Again, smart people, okay, I've got this, now let me work on the other. No, because now you have to deliver. You have to get these first customers really happy with you. They have the value, and then money will follow. Okay, it's what I've learned in my consulting work. If you are helpful, I mean, you'll get paid. It's not more complicated than that. And the way to be helpful is not with your ideas. It's not with your technology. It's not just knowing your customer. It's actually moving on, saying, now we are going to be able to provide it to you in this way. You know, I don't want to come across like this is all something that that you do yourself. So easy traps, just before we move on and go back to the original questions here. Oh yeah, everybody is going to want this. So my tool, evaluate, it's just essentially a better hardness tester. You look at the amount of hardness testers that are in the market, say, oh, mine is better, so oh my gosh. You know, everybody, it's huge. But it wasn't the end story, and I kind of knew it, and that's why you start questioning, okay, so we're going to make this piece of equipment, you know, how much is going to cost us, and then how much are we going to recoup our investment cost? Okay, so now we're starting about a hardness tester that's not only better, but is also more expensive, right? And there is really where you really start thinking about your business model. Is the price point in the equipment going to be a showstopper for that market segment? If yes, move on, take the next one. So that it's just an easiest trap to fall in. Okay, this is great, now let's file the patent, let's start building it. My uncle and his friends, you know, they like to support this because they've been successful before. It's a very, very easy trap. Someone will want to make it for me. So it happened to us. We had the idea, we proven it in the lab, so this is going to be better than what's out there. We came to a big instrument vendor and say, hey, you know, isn't this a great idea? Don't you want it? The good thing is, we were blunt enough. We did our real customer, you know, would you pay for this? Would you invest? And they said, not yet, okay? That was the best response. Instead of waiting 6 months, within a month, they said, you gotta take this further before we want to talk to you more. Okay, so next month you sign up for a business competition because now you know you're not going to be able to do it yourself. You know, that's my history. So the idea came up in June, and then we worked on it in the lab. By November, December, we had enough to show to people, and they said, wow, it could be great, but again, the timing. If we decide to step in with you now, because we're a big company, we're going to slow you down. We're way too expensive on any of our processes, so it's on you to take your idea further. It was the best response. So if you ever have somebody coming to you like that, just don't waste their time. You know, be very you know, interrogating about what they have, what they've done, and yeah, tell them. If this is something, tell them, well, by the time it's accurate and proven, that's what they said, then we would be interested. Okay, well, others are going to be at that point. So, you know, I appreciate the interest here. You may be able to get technical feedback. There may be a good relationship being built there, but they're not going to be spending a lot of time on this because they have a business to run. And that's what we all need to realize. Everybody has a job to do. It's just a hard reality. Now, again, do you have time? If you have time, here's a quick list here for people here on the campus. So the I-Corps is sponsored by the National Science Foundation. It's essentially a precursor to be able to apply for a grant at this point. It's a special program where they'll tell you how to make interviews, and you may be getting paid for this. There are nothing big, but you know, you're thinking about, you know, having to fly potentially to a conference. They may be able to cover those fees if you apply with an idea that is eligible. Get down the road, the venture mentoring service at MIT is a very valuable source when you have a small team and you say, this is what we think we're doing. They'll put you in touch with successful entrepreneurs that understand the ins and outs, mostly of your industry. This is not so much for how you're going to handle the technology, but how you're going to handle the customer build-up and thinking about your business model. From my experience, they won't ask you for big write-ups. They ask you to essentially engage with them. We've been members for a while now, and we have meetings, let's say every other month, that we explain what you got, and then it's a discussion. And like Steve Lyon said at the beginning, the meeting is useless if there's no controversy. You'll get beat up. Business people are awesome at that.
Albert Sloan said that. Albert Sloan. I'm just quoting Albert
Oh,
Sloan.
it doesn't matter who said it first. The idea is if you talk to engineers and really demonstrate how hard you work on this, they may feel some empathy and not really tell you what it is, but with a lot of business people, they'll be more clear here. So have you found your customer? How much are they going to pay? How much is it going to cost you to do this? And if you don't have an answer, then they'll just say, well, go and find out, right? So there are a lot of resources, and I can't emphasize how important it is. Now, speaking to the question of the patent now, we're just a few minutes ago, I'm going to take an extra minute here. This is what I suggest, is you have to be able to explain what you're offering. It could very well be that it does not involve explaining your invention. It could very well be. You need the right connections. You need people that will vouch for you and say, they have a great idea. But when you go to venture mentoring service, it is confidential. You don't need to have all your patent figured out. You don't need to tell them everything. They don't need to know. But essentially, typically with a customer, and that's the biggest example in sales, they have a problem, okay? They need to put a new building there. They need to dig a hole. They don't care exactly how your automated backhoe works. If you tell them it's going to take half the time to do it, they'll be able to tell you how much extra they're willing to pay for that. They'll know. They don't need to know your details. And this is part of the customer discovery. It's the biggest advice that I would provide. We have ideas that we refile as provisional patents because we have not told people about it. And therefore, we can just keep refiling it, so we delay the time that we have to cover the fee for the invention. Somebody else comes up with the idea and files it, yeah, we lose, but it is entrepreneurship. You just can't do everything perfect. You have to pick your battle. And we'll talk more on Monday. Thank you.